Hello and welcome to today's yoga question. I'm Lizzie Lasater, and joining us is the radiant Erica Morton Magill, who is here to talk to us about rest. Here's my question. I have to pull up the exact wording. Careful. Achtung, big words. Talk to us, Erica, about modernity, patriarchy, capitalism, and how they relate to rest.
It is a big question, and those are big words. But I think what prompted us to ask this question, and Lizzie, you even said when we were speaking a couple months back, that when you're lying down in Savasana, it's the only time when you're neither consuming nor producing something. And I've been thinking about that a lot because for most of us, when we step onto our yoga mats, whether it's an active practice or a more relaxation oriented practice, it's the only 30, 60, 90, whatever, 5 minutes out of the day where we don't have our shoes, we don't have our phones, we are just resting. And that's not really something that's contributing to society by lying down and doing nothing. That's not seen as contributing to a larger project of society. And so it's discouraged against. Loitering is discouraged against. Hanging around, doing nothing, refusing to give your attention to a project other than just being. And so I think that this lying down, this resting is actually kind of radical. It's a radical experiment in not contributing to the economy, to the world of which we're a part, to the systems that are asking consistently more and more and more of us. And so I love this idea that in lying down, in resting, we are no longer in service to other people, other systems, other projects. We're simply doing it for ourselves. I think that in terms of what the world is asking of us, it's asking us to always be on. It's asking us to always give our attention. And so I've heard you and your mom say that lying down and rest in Savasana is a practice of pratyahara, of withdrawing the senses and pulling them back into ourselves. I want to take that a step further and say that in the attention economy in which we live in, right, in which everything is sort of vying for our attention, right? I've heard the Netflix CEO say that his biggest competitor is dreams. Our attention it's our only commodity. It's like really the only resource we have that's our own. And when we withdraw our attention, it's a form of pratyahara. So refusing to give our attention and time.
I am blown away. I love this idea, Erica. It's like I've read that with modernity came with factory work, the idea that your time can be split up into little segments and you could be paid in 30-minute increments for your time. And before that, we had a different relationship with time and with rest. And therefore, when exactly. Yeah. And efficiency. And so when time becomes a commodity, that you can sell to someone, it also then therefore rest becomes an opportunity cost.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're resting, you have FOMO or you should be doing something else. Yeah. And then I love that. I hadn't made that jump because that to me is the kind of industrial revolution model of time, like getting paid for your time. But in the attention economy, where you're a slave to your Instagram account because you have to scroll for 50 minutes a day, or Netflix or YouTube or all of the things that we do, that in that attention economy, it is an act, it is a revolutionary act of resistance to pull back your attention from the AI overlords, and no longer you are closing the hatches I love that. Oh, that's just poetic.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it back to that. I think that's really important, as well as what is modernity and when did this sort of vision of time and efficiency and always on begin? And I think that's really important to recognize too, is it hasn't always been this way where time is money.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about modernity and a little bit about capitalism. Those are clear. What is the word patriarchy doing in this topic? in this question? Like, how does that relate to rest?
That's a great question. So I think that patriarchy, it's this sort of pace of moving that isn't considering necessarily the natural flows, the natural cycles of life. It's about sort of moving again at this really fast pace in which there's a linear trajectory upwards of progress and pace. And so I think a different way to look at things would be without consideration for the natural cycles of rest and sleep. There's no time to lie fallow. There's no time to go inward, to consider the more maternal flows and energy cycles. It's this always on, always having to be there, always, producing again. So it ties into these other ways that we're speaking to, in which we're not honoring the other half of that sort of balance of life.
That's a beautiful way of putting it without blaming the men.
Yes.
Okay, so as we
yeah.
move to close, let me ask you for your opinion, if you have one. What scares you the most about these trends that you see relationship with rest as seen through the lens of modernity, capitalism, patriarchy? Where's it all going, or what makes you cringe?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to me is that we can sort of extrapolate, we can sort of go from this understanding of always needing to be on and always working and always producing, consuming, contributing, taking part in, and look at climate through that lens as well, right? The earth is exhausted and we haven't given the earth an opportunity to rest. We are in a global energy crisis, right? So it isn't just personal energy crises, it's a global collective energy crisis. And if we continue to always be on, to always extract, to always demand more and more of the earth, of ourselves, of each other, then really leading towards collapse, individual and collective. And so I think that's my biggest fear, is that without acknowledging the need to pause, to lie down, to exhale, that we're going to destroy ourselves and the planet. So I hope that we can find a better way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen. I will just say, as we close, I have often had an underlying anxiety about my work as a restorative yoga teacher, that I'm a little bit of like a privileged white lady telling other privileged white ladies, like, I'm tired, you're tired, lie down, honey. That was how I sometimes negatively, visioned my work or myself when I was doubting. But recently I've had a big shift into seeing this work. Yes, it does remain often like talking to like in my world, in my work. But if you think about it, if I'm speaking to someone who lives on $1 a day and lives in a slum in Mumbai, they're not really consuming, and their carbon footprint is so much lower that the people that I'm speaking to and the people that I do this work with, really, we are the ones who are over consuming, and out of an anxiety to not sit still, and out of an inability to not be flying somewhere every weekend, going, doing, being, consuming more. And so I actually think of it as kind of a big leverage point when you're reaching people who have the power to slow down in our madness, and myself included, and that lowering of our collective anxiety, really, I feel optimistic that is a point we can affect positive change.
I love that. Yeah, lowering the collective anxiety and bringing that down together. It's almost like regulating our collective nervous system.
Absolutely. Rewiring, retuning, resetting to a point where we're not as needy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us once again. Tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah. So I'm at yogafolk.co, and I write weekly-ish newsletter that you can find at yogafolk.blog.
Okay. And it's well worth subscribing to. I am at Lizzie, Lizzie.yoga. You can find my newsletter, Rest with Lizzie Lasater, there. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
It's been such a pleasure.